Good morning, class 7B. A very warm welcome back after your, short but very refreshing term break, because during this break, you had the festive season in India has begun, sorry. The festive season has begun, and starting from Ganpati Puja to Vishwakarma Puja, and, very soon, what is going to come is Durga Puja. So Ganpati went back to come back with his family now. So before we celebrate Durga Puja, before all the fun and everything begins, we still have some classes, and we are going to start with term 2 syllabus. Okay. Now, before the break, I actually told you we'll start with Mughals, but after checking your copies and discussing with Lopa ma'am, we came to one conclusion that we will start with civics, because I still find some of your civics concepts are not very good. Many of you have messed up the civics part while writing the answers.
I don't like civics.
No. This is not going to help, because civics is something that is very important. Having a clear concept in civics is very, very important, which I'm seeing many of you are lacking. There are lots of smaller mistakes in the civics part that I noted. So we will start with civics, and since you are already learning about the Constitution, hence we will continue with the next part of civics, and we will complete this, then go to history. So in term 2, what I would like to say in civics, you have the topic fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. There are two things. One is fundamental rights, and the other one is directive principles of state policy. It's in one chapter, so you will be doing this. After we finish this, in history, of course, the Mughal era that you are going to learn. Now, the Mughal era is divided into two parts. You all are going to do, what we call as the Great Mughals in the very beginning. The Great Mughals are the main part that you are going to do. The Great Mughals is again divided into two parts. One is till Akbar and one is after Akbar. So the Great Mughals basically ends with Aurangzeb. After Aurangzeb, there were a few Mughal rulers, but they were not strong enough, and they did not do any significant contribution. So after Aurangzeb, we will not be learning in detail about any ruler. Rather, what we will do is that we will just touch upon, and we will see how the Mughal Empire declined and gave way to the British rule. All right. So Mughal Empire, basically, we are going to do all the great Mughals, that is starting from Babur, we'll go up to Aurangzeb. And then we are going to do the decline slowly, how the decline took place. Now,
after Mughal Empire,
this is what I'm saying. So Mughal Empire is the main big topic. After Mughal Empire is done, there is one more thing that we are going to do in history, which is called the composite culture. Now, composite culture, basically, you see, earlier it was Hinduism. After Hinduism, Hinduism was there. When Islam came, changes started coming. Lots of new things in our literature, in our songs, architecture, everything. So a lot of mixture, mixed things came up. Mixing of the Hindu culture with Islamic culture, Islamic, Persian, Arabian. So new concepts came up. This is known as the composite culture. So I'll tell you why composite and everything. And during this time of composite culture, two great movements were going on in India. on one side, what we call as the Bhakti movement. In Bhakti movement, you already know about some of them, like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You have heard about him. So why are they so famous? Why are they called the great people of during the composite culture? Then Mirabai, these people for Bhakti movement. So one side, when Bhakti movement was going on the other side, it was Sufi movement. So Sufism was also gaining new heights in India. Sufism, the Sufi culture, Sufi songs, music, and dohas and all were written. Great poets were there, like Sant Kabir was there. So you will see how the mixing and intermingling of everything took place. So we are going to do that part as well. Now, along with these two chapters, well, Bahamani and Vijayanagara is done as a project. Bahamani and Vijayanagara kingdom that you do as a project, we will tell you, we always cover that as a part of project making or some research work, but not written assessments in that sense, but we will take 2 classes and discuss the topic through project sharing. All right. Along with this, there is one more topic that is not there in your book right now, but this topic will be your connecting chapter with class 8. Okay, so this is till Indian history. What we discussed till now, civics and Indian history. So you have one topic that we give a study material on, and that topic connects, as I told you, class 7 with class 8. That chapter is known as the Renaissance. Renaissance means how various changes. So you ended world history.
Ma'am, the dark ages came out.
Ma'am, in Tintoretto's Jisoo, there was that.
In
Renaissance.
Tintoretto Jisoo, it was there. Renaissance was the period of new beginnings. So if you don't understand Renaissance, you will actually not
When will we learn
understand
British Empire?
British Empire in class 8. That is what I just said. This will be your connecting chapter to class 8.
Ma'am, can you lower your voice?
Okay, I'll lower the volume, then you will say that we can't hear.
Ma'am.
It's perfect.
It is okay
You
only.
lower the volume of your speaker, na? Then only it is done. I mean headphones. A little bit you lower
Ma'am.
the volume. Yes.
Ma'am, actually, since the morning, there is no network in our area, so I could not join the first class, and now...
So the recording is there. Don't worry. As it is in the first half, we were just discussing normal discussions and catching up after the break. So don't worry. And the time when I started telling the main thing, the class is being recorded. There's nothing to worry. Now, as I was telling children, so Renaissance is going to be a topic for which I'll give you a study material. Now, very clearly, what I would like to say is, we don't know what will happen in your term 2 exams about the summatives, because it's all about the situation and the government directives and what comes, what is happening. It's all dependent on the situation. Nothing can be told in advance. If there is a summative exam, you will definitely have term 2 chapters. Now again, how much marks will term 2 be conducted on and everything? That also depends on the situation. If it is an 80 marks exam, and if we keep any chapter as a revision chapter, that we will inform you well in advance. If there is any revision chapter from term 1, we will inform you well in advance. Now, keeping the situation in mind, maybe it will not be an 80 marks exam, maybe a 30 or a 40 marks exam can be taken. So we will inform you the syllabus accordingly. Okay, don't worry whether you have any revision chapters or not from term 1. Usually when 80 marks exams are there, maybe 1 or 2 chapter from term 1 gets repeated, or you have it as a revision chapter. But we are not telling it right now because we don't know what is going to happen at the end of this term. What is the situation and how the assessments will take place. But for now, all we can say is focus on every assessment, focus and pay attention, Give your works on time. Now, very importantly, this is something I would say as a class teacher, not as your history geography teacher. Be very sincere in your approach from the beginning of term 2. Class 7's final report card, no matter how you are assessed throughout the session, in a summative, whatever be the mode of assessment, in class 8, you select your subjects for 9 and 10. And whether you are given your subjects as per your choice, it depends on your performance of class 7 final and 8. So 8, how you perform from the beginning of the term, as well as how you have from class 6, you came up to class 7. Initially, there can be a little up and down. We consider that, but term 2, class 7, take it very seriously. Your term 2 report cards will be given importance when you do your subject selection for class 9 and 10. In class 8, all your parents and you go for a subject selection meeting, and then 9 and 10, whether you will be getting your subjects as per your choice. So, that will definitely be of course, you give your choice and then the school makes the final decision. So I would tell this, the decision is definitely made taking into account your 7th performance and 8th performance. Do not be casual with any subject. Am I clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am.
Okay, good. I'm very sure if you people try it will be very good. And in 8 also, whatever you want to take. So if your performance is good, whatever you want to take, you are allowed to take that. But if not, then there will be consideration. So let's avoid that, and let's work from the very beginning, so that in 8, whatever you select, whatever is your choice subject, you get that. All right. Now we are going to go ahead with civics. Now, civics, children, history and geography till 10 is compulsory, just like English and Bengali. No option there. You will have to study. Hence, you all are going to work in this subject. While I was checking civics, I found still conceptual gaps. So quickly revising. First thing is, India was a monarchy. That is, India had kings and queens. Now, after the Britishers came, the East India Company came, slowly from traders, they turned into rulers. The East India Company never directly ruled. The East India Company had puppet rulers. You all have read about one, that is Mir Jafar, right? If you remember reading about Mir Jafar, he was a puppet ruler. In the same way, the Britishers, in taking various policies and all, the East India Company set up puppet rulers in various areas, but they were actually the ones who were controlling these rulers and these kingdoms. But then, after the first battle of independence, that is the revolt of 1857, India went directly under the rule of the Queen of England, that is Queen Victoria. So India went directly under the rule of Queen Victoria. Now, 100 years after that, almost 100 years after that, in 1947, 10 years rather from being 100, 1947, India gained its independence. India gained its independence and India became a democratic republic. Now, the world faced the 2 world wars, and as already I had told you. Now, India, during that time, the Britishers wanted to hand over the charge to the Indians. And for handing over this charge, the British from Britain, a 3-member cabinet was sent. Cabinet is a group. A 3-member group cabinet was sent to India. This with a mission of planning. What was the mission? The mission was to plan India independence, how India will be handed over charge and how it will gain independence. Hence, the cabinet mission came to India, and the cabinet, after studying, making all their, researches and everything, they proposed, all cabinet, CM in caps, they proposed that India needs to have a constitution from now onwards, and it will be a people's government, not kings and queens, but a government made by the people and for the people. So the cabinet said, the cabinet mission said, form a constituent assembly. Cabinet said, form a constituent assembly which will have all members from different regions. This assembly will frame the constitution. Just like, suppose we have a class of 46 students. Now, I say that now we have come to this conclusion that we want to do a class program. Now, I divide, now the class is 46. It's a big class. Everybody in one group will lead to mess. So the entire class is divided into smaller groups. Some in charge of soft boards, some of you in charge of the program schedule, some of you in charge of making computer PPTs and slides that will go on based on the program. Some of you is in charge of food. Like this, there are different groups. And then there is one group, maybe of 4 house captains. The 4 house captains, they are one group. All the other groups report to the house captains. They tell the house captains what they have, what are their ideas, what are their plans. Now the house captains reads all of them. They make the necessary changes and says that, this program should be a little shorter in length, or make the video a little more longer, include this, don't include that. So the house captains prepares the final program list with what is the food, what is the, how is that charge being decorated, what are the performances, everything. This is exactly how the Constituent Assembly worked. Okay, the entire assembly was divided into small groups. Each group worked on a different area. Okay, now all the groups submitted their report to the drafting committee, which was headed by Dr. Ambedkar, and the drafting committee collected those reports. After collecting, they studied the reports, made necessary changes, in a balanced way, prepared the final draft of the constitution. This is a sequence. You cannot write the drafting committee, prepared the final draft first and then write that the drafting committee collected the reports. You don't come to school first and then brush your teeth. You brush your teeth when you wake up, then come eat your breakfast, then come to school. So there is a sequence. Here also, the sequence is important. Quite a few of you did not maintain this. So this is important. Now the constitution was framed, and the constitution, as I said that India is a democratic country, democratic republic. The government is formed by us. We vote. Anybody, any person, no matter, how rich or poor you are, if you are a citizen of India, if you are serving the country, you can rise up to the position of a leader if people vote and select you. So it's a government of the people, formed by us, and the government works for us. India is called the largest democracy in the world. Do you know why?
Because of the population.
Very good. So what does the population do?
In the population,
Elect representatives for the
Oh, sorry.
government.
Elect the representative.
Takes the representative.
Exactly. India has the highest number of voters in the world. We have a large population, and India has the highest number of voters, people who give vote in the world. We are
Around
the largest.
20 billion.
What?
The population is around 2.3 billion.
No, 1.3 to
1.3 to
1
1.32.
point something.
1.32
But,
billion.
yeah,
1.32 billion.
not that this population also includes children. We don't include children. We follow universal adult franchise. Why universal? Because all over the world, 18 years is taken as the age when a person reaches adulthood. Till 18, we consider that you all are children because you need, a child needs
Adolescent.
to be trained. There is growth, there is development. From 18 onwards, we feel that a person is capable enough to think, take his or her own decisions,
Ma'am,
work and earn a living. Yes, Shubhayan.
ma'am, if China was not in communism, then if China was
Then
in
China
democracy,
would have
then
been the largest democracy.
largest
But
democracy,
China has a
yes.
different way of
China is
doing it.
communism.
Yes. Aditya, what were you saying?
Ma'am, I'm saying that in America and some other places, we can get a driving license at 17.
We can get the driving license
At 17 years old, or maybe
at
even
17.
16.
At 17, but the voting right, like the universally, 18 years is considered to be adult. Everywhere, 18 is the, that is why it's called universal adult franchise. So 18 years is taken as the age for adulthood. Now, we vote and select the government. The government works for us. The positions are not hereditary. And India is called a sovereign country. Sovereign because nobody else can tell India that India will have to take this decision. That is, no outside power can take decisions on our behalf. Neither can they force us to take a decision. Yes, suggestions can be given, but decision will always remain in the hands of our government. Like I gave you the example, when will lockdown take place in India? Do we need a lockdown or not? That cannot be dictated by any other government, but
Suggestions can be given.
Yes, the United Nations, like, it can give us the suggestion, but it cannot force us. In the same way, the government works for the people, and their main work is to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. Hence, socialist. It is called socialist because its main work is to bridge the bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. Now, these are all written in the preamble, P capital, the preamble which is fixed. The preamble, these are the ideals and the nature of the state which has already been told. Now, based on the preamble, the other parts of the constitution are framed. Now, the constitution has several other parts. Okay, these parts contains the various laws. You are going to learn about two important parts. One is part 3, which contains the fundamental rights, and one is part 4, which contains the directive principles of state policy. Now, we are saying India is a democracy. Okay, in a democracy, we cannot say the people have any kind of power if the people are not given certain rights. If we cannot make some decisions for ourselves, if we cannot choose certain things, then we cannot call this India as a democracy. So the common people must be getting some basic rights as a citizen of India. Hence, the third part of the constitution, which tells about the fundamental rights. Then we elect the government. The government is elected. The government is working for the people. The government, since they are our representatives, they have the right to make the laws or sometimes change the laws or work for the people so they can make decisions. Now, how are they going to make the decisions? What decisions are they going to take? How are they going to work? So they need some directions. There needs to be some guidelines. So a very good other word, to be used here can be guidelines. They need some guidance. Okay. So the people who framed the constitution prepared a list of such guidelines, some directions for the government, which the government needs to keep in mind when they are framing the laws of the nation, or if they are making any changes in the laws, they need to keep these directions in mind. Thus, the directive principles of state policy. This is there in part 4 of the Constitution. The directive principles are there in part 4 of the Constitution. The directive principles are guidelines, hence they are not enforceable by law. That is, if the government decides that I don't want to follow this directive right now, or that is the government's final decision. You can't force them that they have to do this, but these are basic guidelines which is kept in mind in general by the government. But the fundamental rights are the people's rights.
The direction of the directive policy.
The fundamental rights are the people's rights. If somebody tries to take it away forcefully from you, then you can always go to the court and you can always file a complaint in the court against the person. So next day we are going to do the fundamental rights in detail. Yes, Kamogna?
Yes, ma'am. Just Shubhayan, I think now said that China has a communist party.
Yes.
Then I read in one of my history books in World War II that there was a fascist party.
Fascism
Led by
was
Benito
there.
Mussolini.
Yes.
What is a
Fascism-
fascist party?